Muy bien. Once again, welcome everybody. I hope you guys were blessed with the presentation we had so far. Is this introduction into the work that we're going to do? I would like to begin with a quick review, and this is going to be quick indeed. You guys already know these points. I hope you guys took note. We were talking about the 7 keys. That's where we ended. I just want to go over them again real quick. So we said that the most important thing when we study the book of Revelation has to do with the key or the center of the book, right? We said that it was Christ. The center of prophecy, period, is Jesus Christ. And we need to make sure that we understand that. On the next presentation, hopefully, I'm going to be talking about the issue of Israel, which I mentioned already. I would like to go ahead and talk about that and clear it out, okay? The second thing is to identify the language, whether it's what I'm reading is literal or what I'm reading is prophetic, in order to know whether this needs to be understood or the symbols need to be identified and see what their meaning is or not. Some cases you won't have to do that. You can just read it and understand that what it's saying is plain language, is literal. Then we said that we need to find the meaning in the immediate context. Just the chapter itself. Start right there. Read a little before and a little bit after and trying to find out if the meaning is just right there before you go somewhere else looking for it. However, if you do not find it there, then you can go ahead and look at more than just the chapter. Now you can look at the book itself, or maybe a few more chapters, and so on and so forth. You're working your way out. Eventually, you're going to end up looking at other prophetic books. That will be the next key there. Find the meaning in other prophetic books, like Daniel, for example, which happens to be a parallel book with Revelation. They explain each other very well. Doesn't necessarily have to be Daniel, but it's the other prophetic book that you know for sure is going to be speaking the same language. This one is find the meaning in the rest of the Bible. So the meaning is not going to come out from what somebody thinks it should be or what somebody had a dream that it was. You're actually going to look into the Word of God and see what the meaning is. You have the entire book. After you look in and go through the process, and you work out from the text, don't leave the book. It's going to be in the Bible. From Genesis to Revelation, you have plenty of options to find it. Then I finish with this last statement here, and it is the fact that when it comes to the book of Revelation particularly, the book is filled with Old Testament information and passages and connections. You cannot understand it if you're just going to take it and try to interpret it without taking into account everything the Old Testament says, because the book was written assuming that you already know. I'm quoting Isaiah here. I'm quoting Ezekiel here. I'm quoting Daniel here. So that's how the book was written. You need the Old Testament in order to understand it. And as I was saying, more specifically, you need to know the sanctuary message, because the whole book is laid out through the sanctuary. As you walk through the book of Revelation, you're actually walking through the sanctuary. If you don't understand the sanctuary and how it works and what it means, there's very little you can understand this correctly. You can come up with something, but it's not likely to be the correct interpretation. All right, so we're going to go now to the passages that we're going to study. This should have been part of the introduction, but we didn't make it that far last time, and so I want you to go with me there to the actual passages. Of course, if that's what we're going to be studying, we need to look at them. We're going to read them very quickly. I want you to kind of get the text, If you want to read it from your Bibles, even better. I put it in there, but I think it's probably better if we just read it from the Word. We're going to do that right now. So take the book, okay? And take the Bible. Let's go to the passages there. We're going to read Revelation 14, 6 to 12. And then I'm going to add some more things there as far as the importance of these verses. Why are they so important? Okay? So let's read them. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, and worship Him who made heaven and earth and the sea and the springs of water. Verse 8, and another angel followed him, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the Lord, of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest, day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Finally, here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So that's up to 12. In order to understand that, we're going to look farther than that, but I just figured that that's the bulk of what I call the three angels message, right? You have heard it before. You probably have presentations before on them. I hope and I pray that as we do these, in spite of whatever you have already known or you have already studied, you'll be able to discover new things and maybe understand things better, or maybe remember in such a way that you can actually explain them. That will be probably the goal, particularly. It is a very important thing to be able to teach what this message is and what it means, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the importance of the message. So the book of Revelation presents to us what we know as the great controversy. I'm not going to talk about the book entirely, but I want you to kind of get what is happening. You know, when we were in school in Colombia, they taught us, and I was trying to think. I should have probably done some research and find out, but I'm sure it's the same in English. I just don't know the terminology in English for these. They taught us that every story has three parts: iniciación, nudo, y desenlace. So I don't know how would they teach you here in America, but basically what it's saying is that every story has three parts, and so the story kind of begins very, very, very easy or nicely, you know, and all of a sudden it comes to a tangle. They call it el nudo, meaning like there is something going on that is very critical, and then finally there will be the end. You know, it resolves itself, a resolution, if you will. So I don't know. I need to probably look it up and see what the terms are. But when you look at the book of Revelation, it's very similar. So you look at the book of Revelation, and God starts with the messages to the churches, and you know he starts moving in a certain direction that he's going to. And of course, there's a lot of repetition here, you know, like the trumpets, the seals, and different things that are very similar, but adding different aspects to the story. But I'm not going to focus on that right now. I just want you to see very plainly what is happening. When you start talking about the great controversy, it begins around chapter 12. There is this conflict going on between the woman, right, and the dragon, between the child that is given birth to, and there is also a conflict there going on. And then eventually the conflict ends with the dragon raging, getting angry, and going after the seed of the woman. I'm not going to explain all of that. I don't even know if I'll get to that on these presentations that I'm doing. But right now, what I want you to see is how this thing is moving, you know. You start there about this conflict between two powers, if you want to call it that. I call them two beings, God versus Satan. Chapter 13 then starts talking to us about the beasts. Chapter 13 is a description of Satan's elements, if you will. The beasts, one that comes out of the sea, one that comes out of the water, how they go and wage war against the church. This is the continuation of how chapter 12 ended. And it gives all the details about the evil side, if you will, the evil power in this controversy. And then we get to chapter 14, and it starts describing the character or the characteristics of the winning party, which is Jesus Christ. How does it do that? It does it on the invitation to worship Him, which we're going to be studying in verses 6 and 7. And then it does it through the harvest, which is what comes right after the message, okay? And so if you have these issues between these two different elements, these two different beings, I find that this message right here is the one that creates this separation, okay? The book is basically giving us these descriptions of and characteristics of both sides of the controversy. You get to pick who you want to worship, or you get to pick who you want to follow, or you get to choose what you're going to do. There is a controversy going. Chapter 12 is clearly telling us. And then as it develops, you know, it tells us Christ is going to win. And then it shows us how it's going to end, right? Basically, the next chapters is similar. It's a little bit of the same. 15 is gonna be talking about the judgments. 16 up to 17, when it talks about Babylon, is going to explain Babylon and how it falls. It's going to talk about all the characteristics of Babylon. And by 18, when you finish in 18, there is you're going to hear the last appeal by an angel to leave Babylon. And then after that is over. 19, you're going to see Jesus Christ coming. 20, 21, and the rest of the book is just New Jerusalem and the establishment of the kingdom. That will be the resolution of the whole mess. So I want you to see how important this message is right here, because the message in 14, the one that we're going to be studying, is the one that contains the characteristics that separate the whole deal. You either follow the Creator or else. Between these two powers, between these two parties, these passages that we're going to be studying become fundamental. Do you see the importance? Are you capturing this? I hope I'm saying this very clearly, okay? And you're understanding why. Why is it important, Pastor? Because if the end is near, and the end is going to be how it is described in the book of Revelation, this message right here, this core, central message, seems to have the key you, whether you want to go with the beast or whether you want to go with Christ, with the Creator. So you must understand it. You must accept it. You must believe it. If you want to be with the Creator, that is. If you want to worship the Creator, you need to understand what the message that is being given is. What is it about? What does it mean? And how do I do these things? Okay? So I left that on the screen right there because I want you to see how it's broken down in many different parts. So the angel is inviting, for example, to fear God. What does it mean to fear God? How do I fear God? So those are the things that we need to see. What does the Bible say about the fear of God, and what does it mean? Why is it important? Well, because if I want to be part of those who are choosing the Creator, I have to do this, what the angel is inviting us to do, right? Fear God. Not only that, if I want to invite people from the world to make a decision, so I need to invite them to fear God as well. But unless I know what it means, I cannot tell somebody to do it, or explain them how to do it, right? Give glory to Him. What does it mean to give glory to God, for example? The hour of His judgment has come. What does it mean that the hour of His judgment has come? How can I tell somebody about this? Because this is important stuff. The hour of His judgment has come is very important because it makes a difference whether you believe in a Jesus that is real, in a real place, interceding for us, and that we're actually living in the Day of Atonement, and that's important for us. If you don't understand that and what it means, then I don't know. How are you going to experience Christ? Where is He? What is He doing? A lot of our Christian brothers and sisters, they know He's up in heaven somewhere, but they don't know what that means. Worship Him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. So how do I do that? How do I worship the Creator? Very simply put, okay? So that's why I believe that's important. I believe this message is also important because it takes place right before the coming of Christ. And you guys saw that, but we stopped right there. We didn't continue reading. If we would have continued reading, right after the three angels' messages, there is a promise. It's a beautiful promise. I'm going to skip it though for now. And then immediately there is the harvest. It says, "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man." What does that mean? Who is the Son of Man? Son of God, Son of Man, Jesus Christ. "Having on his head a golden crown, and on his hand a sharp sickle." So he's coming on the clouds, and he's coming to do what? He's got a crown. That means he's coming as a king. And what is the sickle used for? For harvesting. He's coming to collect. He's coming to pick up. "And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, Trust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." But it doesn't stop there, right? "So he who sat on the cloud trust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped." So he's coming and he's actually going to do it, and it's done. Then he continues on. "Then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire. And he cried with a loud cried to him who had the sharp sickle, saying what? Trust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters. Now this is different. Notice the two different harvests. This is an order that you're going to find several times in the Bible and in the book of Revelation. The faithful ones are collected first, and then the judgment comes upon the wicked. It continues. And it's happening here as well. And how do I know that? Well, the grapes are being collected with a different purpose, right? It says, gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for the grapes are fully ripe. Verse 19, so the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. You see the difference? What are they going? This last collection is not the harvest. It's a different purpose for these. It says, and the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. And so, did you get the picture? So is this message important or not? What do you think? Is it important that we understand it? Basically, the Bible is telling me that this message is the one that is going to ripen the fields and get those who are going to go to heaven ready, and it's also going to ripen the other one and get those who are not going to go ready too for their collection, for their end, whatever that might be. And so we must understand it. We must study it, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to focus on that. That's why we narrow everything to just that. Of course, in doing that narrowing, we're still going to be all over the place in Revelation. We're just not going to study the book of Revelation as a whole. We're going to study that which focuses on that precisely. Key point. What's the important part of this whole message, of this whole study? We already said it, right? The center of prophecy is Jesus Christ. He is the one that is coming. He is the one that we're called to fear, give glory to, and to worship. So it's all about our connection with Christ, basically. Getting to know Christ personally, getting to know the real biblical Christ. Okay? Because he said it himself that there will come many people saying, I am Christ, but we are not to fall for that. Why? Because we can find the true Christ in Scripture, not the Christ that somebody imagined how he will be like this, or he will be like that, or maybe he is like this. Forget that. He gave a revelation in his word, and he gave us a revelation in the book of Revelation for us to know the true Christ. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the list of subjects. We're going to cover a lot of work. I mean, we're going to cover a lot of ground, even though. So we started with the intro, which is what we're doing right now. Second presentation is called the Bible and its method. Which one is the method that the Bible uses to interpret prophecy? I'm going to start on that one today. We probably won't finish until next Wednesday, but that's fine. Like I told you, we're going to be doing these at our own pace. We can do that freely. So the Bible and its method is going to be what we're going to do next. Groundwork, basically, setting up the stage. We're going to talk about futurism, preterism, and historicism. We'll probably do that today, actually. We'll make it that far. Number 3, we're going to talk about Israel in Bible prophecy. That's also groundwork. Because I want you to understand that the center of prophecy is Jesus Christ. We're not to be excited about whatever happens in Israel. Many things might happen in Israel. I'm not denying the possibility. What I want you to know, though, is that the center of prophecy is, however, Christ, not Israel. So we'll talk about that. And I want you to understand it because you're going to have conversations with brothers and sisters that also like prophecy, but they understand things differently. And I want you to know where they're coming from so you can speak more clearly to what is it that they're saying. All right? Signs you can't ignore. We're going to talk about the harvest. We already read it here, but I want you to see how close it is. So we're going to be looking at Matthew 24, and we're going to connect it with the second coming, because this is very important. The harvest is going to happen as a result of the 3 angel messages. So we're going to focus on the harvest. We're going to focus on the second coming of Christ. So signs you can't ignore, that's a study of Matthew 24, basically, okay? Signs you can't ignore. The second coming and the secret rapture. We're going to study that next. That's going to be presentation number 5. All of this is focusing on the harvest, because our messages are what's going to prepare the earth for the harvest particularly. So we're going to talk about the second coming. How is the second coming going to take place? And how is that compared to the rapture? And what does the Bible have to say about the coming of Christ, really? Number 6, we're going to talk about the everlasting gospel. When we start now getting into Revelation 14, 6 to 12. The first thing that we saw is that there is an angel that flies in the midst of heaven, and he's bringing something called the everlasting gospel. We're going to talk about that. I think that's very important because a lot of people out there, they think they're preaching the gospel, and they think they have believed the gospel. Well, we just have to see. The everlasting gospel. Number 7, fear God and give glory to Him. We're going to try to find out at least what fearing God means. Then we're going to go into giving glory to Him for a little bit as well, okay? What does it mean to fear God? That's going to be our study there in number 7. Number 8, the hour of His judgment begun. What does it mean that the hour of a judgment has already begun? Is there such thing as a judgment? What does it mean? Who is the one that is judging? He says the hour of His judgment. Yeah, it's more pointed than that. Fear God, give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, and worship Him who made heaven and earth. We could probably narrow it down to Jesus Christ, but yes, God's judgment is true. What does it mean? We're going to talk about that. Worship the Creator. Number 9, how do you worship He who made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water? We're going to talk about worshiping the Creator. Then we're going to talk about Babylon is fallen. You notice how I'm going through the verses, right? Started with 6, 7, now we're in 8. When we're talking about Babylon, we're going to be talking about chapter 8 because chapter 8 says Babylon is fallen. So what is Babylon? What does it mean? Who is Babylon? Or what does it mean? How does it work? What is Babylon about? Along the lines of that, I'm going to talk about the wine of the wrath of her fornication. I believe that is, mostly I'm going to be focusing on the state of the death on that one. But the wine of fornication from Babylon is a very extensive list of abominations. I'm not going to cover all of them, but definitely we're going to talk about the state of the death, okay? It's very important at that point. Number 12, the mark of the beast. Now I am in verse 9, 14:9. Talks about the mark of the beast, and it talks also about the image of the beast, also in verse 9. So we're going to talk about that. 14, any plans for the millennium. When I'm talking about the millennium, now I'm actually trying to address Revelation 14, verses 10 to 11. In 10 to 11, it says that those who receive the mark are going to be burnt, basically, in the front, before the Lamb, and all of that. What does all of that mean? When is all of that going to take place? We're going to have to talk about that. Then we're going to be talking about the millennium. The lake of fire, we're going to be talking about the lake of fire as well. That's going to be in Revelation 14, 10 to 11. So we can understand all the different verses. Remember, that seminary today is called Understanding Revelation 4, 6 to 12. And I think that about does it. I might have covered everything back then, up to that point. When I get to 15, I should have covered the verses. You should by then understand at least a little bit something of, by God's grace, because it's not just me teaching, but because He will help us understand a little bit better the three angels' message, okay? I'm going to finish with peace in heaven, because this whole thing is presented in the context of the great controversy, so we just want to see how the whole thing ends, finally. So we're going to go to peace in heaven, and I'm going to do a presentation. It's probably going to be a long one. The three angels' messages in action. And that has to do with our Seventh-day Adventist message and why we preach and teach what we do. The whole concept of men. All right? Revelation 14, 6 to 12. Today we're going to